Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, friends of the various social media platforms, anyone and everyone who will tune in today live or see the broadcast later, we begin with our traditional greetings of peace in the Arabic language, Assalamu alaikum. And we want to welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. We have a very special return guest for today's broadcast, the European Muslim scholar of Islam, Dr. Tariq Ramadan. And without any further ado, we want to welcome him to today's broadcast. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Let me ask you, Aki, how is your mother doing? Let's begin with that first, that question first.
She's still hospitalized, so I hope the brothers and sisters and brothers can pray for her. It's not easy. She's a bit better, but still I have some concerns. But alhamdulillah, it's better than the when I sent you the message. This was I don't remember. It was last week. So she's still in hospital.
Okay. Well, we make dua for her, brother, and for her family. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give her a full recovery.
Ameen.
And bless her loved ones to remain fortified during this health-related challenge. Ameen. We have a lot to talk about. A lot is going on, brother, in the global community, but let's begin in the backyard. France recently had some elections and didn't have a great deal of choice to choose from. Subhanallah, from where I stand. How do you see it, brother? How do you see the elections that just occurred in France, and how will this impact, among others, the Muslim community in France?
Yes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Once again, thank you so much for inviting me, and it's always a pleasure to be with you and this program where we can discuss things thoroughly and try to understand what is going on around the world. And yes, we are talking about France. I just want the people who are listening to us around the world, in the United States of America, or in South Africa, or around the globe, to get this right when it comes to France. Because, myself, this was 30 years ago, when I was discussing France, I was hoping that at the European level, the European Union and what is going on throughout Europe will have an impact on what was going on in France by, changing and helping the political climate at the European level to change what was going on in France. And in fact, it's exactly the opposite. What is happening in France and the way the political, parties and the political leaders are dealing with Islam per se has an impact in Europe and even in the United States of America. Because what happened with the Bush administration, the Trump administration, even though now it's not so publicized, the relationship with the leaders and the political leaders in the West are very much influenced by what is happening in France, unfortunately, making Islam a problem, making Islam a Western problem, making Islam or the Muslim presence a problem. And it's exactly what happened over the last 30 years. And the last election were just again, we had to decide, or the people here in France had to decide between Macron and Le Pen, and saying, oh, Le Pen is the far right party and Macron is more centered in the political spectrum, which in fact over the last 2 years, if you look at what happened with Macron, it was known at the international level when he started talking about separatism, talking about and using the same terminology as you have in China when it comes to the Uyghur, and then there are separatists, and making Islam, not being clear about Islam and political Islam as soon as you are involved in, people are asked to be citizens, and when they are involved as citizens asking for their rights as Muslim citizens, oh, this might be political Islam. So political Islam means you are suspected, you are almost radicalized. So if you are practicing your religion, you are too much already. So this rhetoric about Muslims, and this was on both sides, in fact. And we know that some populists were getting it the right way, saying, we need to be more friendly with Muslims in order to get their votes. And they were playing with emotions here. So this is where it's very important to get the right picture, saying that if we don't get this at the European level, and even in the United States of America, understanding the way they are playing Muslims and Islam in the challenges facing elections and votes and things like this, we are not going to get this. We have to stop being emotional, waiting for people to say, I love you, or I like Islam, and just for 2 months or 1 year before the election, and forgetting about us the rest of the time. And what happened for the first time at the same time, because you know that the French Muslim community is the most important one in the West in percentage, even more than, it's more than 6 million. If you have 65 French citizens, it's the biggest one. It's the biggest Muslim community, having also at the same time the biggest Jewish community in the West, in the same country at the same time. And sometimes, confusing between living together and discussing the Palestine and Israel. All this is connected. But for the first time in history, this last election, it was known, Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, saying that Macron needed the Muslim vote, and he knew it. This was the title, the headline, saying that it was for the first time, or it has, there is no Muslim vote, but Muslims for the first time in recent history, and I would say in history, had the opportunity to decide who was going to get to the second round in the first round. Because in 2012, they had the potential to change it in the second round between Sarkozy and Hollande. But this time, it was possible for them to decide who was going to be the second one with Macron. Unfortunately, for 400,000 votes, Le Pen came. And today, again, the elections that are coming, the legislative elections are coming in June, and they also have the opportunity to change the political landscape. So the French politicians, they don't want to speak about the Muslim votes. They are saying, we don't know for whom the Muslims are voting. But this is not true. In fact, they know exactly how to play with Muslims when it comes to elections, knowing now that they can turn the political landscape because of their number, because of their presence on the ground. So you have, it's something which is paradoxical, but it's still there, very negative. This political discourse on Islam and the practicing Muslims per se, and at the same time knowing that they cannot do without them. This is what we have to be aware of.
Tell me this, given what you just said, are there Muslim political operatives, political leaders, and activists um, who, in addition to recognizing the Muslim factor, uh, in these close elections that are taking place in France, are harnessing, really making an effort to educate the Muslim community and unify it and harness it, as a force, not only in defense of Muslims in France, but also for, the better side of France as a so-called republic.
Yeah, El-Hajj Mauri, you are asking the right question, and this is exactly the problem that we have. We have a problem of leadership and political understanding at the highest level. Yes, we have figures and we have organizations trying their best just to challenge, but very often they are on the defensive. So
Yeah.
it's very much discourse about, we are victims. It's all about Islamophobia. That's fine. We know that. We know that Islamophobia, it's a factor. We know that it's working on the ground. We know that it's happening everywhere. It's the case in the United States, it's everywhere in Europe. So now what are we going to do with this? Are we just going to repeat that they don't like Muslims and they don't like Islam and that they are treating us as second-class citizens? That's true, but that's fine. Now what we are doing is to be proactive. And to be proactive, it's to have a political understanding of what is going on. For example, I say, we have two kinds of votes in France: emotional votes and negative votes. So we are against this one. Okay, go against it because we don't like Le Pen, so we are going to go with Macron. And emotional, he said something nice about us, so we have, so for example, there is a Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He's the one who is radical left, and he within his party, we have people who are very much against religion, very much against Muslims, and very much about even he took a very negative stance when people said Allahu Akbar in one demonstration, saying these are Islamists. But he said two very nice things about Muslims, and then we go for him because he's the least of two bad things. So I think that this is a step, but we have to get rid of emotional voting and negative voting to come to something which is constructive, understand our way to deal with the political landscape today, by having a clear understanding of what should change in this country for the politicians and the media, to understand that Muslim citizens are not only French citizens, but they are also an added value within the society. So we have to reform our understanding and to reform the way we are dealing, because many Muslims are saying, yes, we are French Muslims, but they are, psychologically speaking, reacting as foreign citizens within their own country, and just trying to find their place between negative, statements. And once again, what we know is that this crisis in Muslim leadership today, because when you are talking about, the international and the global crisis, look at what is happening in many Muslim majority countries and what is happening in the West today. We have a crisis of leadership. We have a crisis of understanding. What are our priorities? Are we going to just to try to be accepted within and to look at the least of two bad political discourses, or are we going to be proactive and to say, look, now we are. And the French Muslims will understand that they are a social and political leading force within the country. If they understand that they can play and which role they are playing today, because Islam, it's everywhere. It's for the last 20 years, Islam was always there as a turning point for the elections and the election results. We need to get this, and as you are saying, It's not enough to count the Muslim organizations that were closed, or the mosques that were closed, or the leaders that were removed. That's fine. This is the negative side of the equation. What are we going on the ground? And this is where I'm saying to the Muslims, and by the way, this is also something that I have been repeating around the globe and Western countries. You have to play a role at the local level. Now your main target is local authority. This is going to change the national landscape. Don't just be obsessed with presidential election, because this is a game.
That's right. That's right, brother. You're right. And, you know, speaking about the challenges, and you are correct that, you know, the challenges that you articulated that the Muslims are having in France are very similar to the challenges that we are having here in the United States, that Muslims are having in Britain, etc., different parts of the West. With that being said, what are your thoughts on the political discourse that's taking place in the United States? What kind of impact is this discourse having on France? Do you
You mean about Islam, or as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, just the discourse that is taking place in the United States around the the major hot button issues of the day, especially as it pertains to Muslims and to national security and to foreign policy as it pertains to Muslim nations and that rogue state known as Israel. I mean, what is the discourse in the United States? What impact, if any, is it having on French political discourse?
Of course, all this discussion about separatism, about committed Muslims or practicing Muslims are being potential threats, and about security. Remember what happened in 2001 and just after Homeland Security, and this whole narrative that we had about, Muslims and you are with us or against us. This
Yes.
happened in 2017, exactly after the attacks and the Charlie Hebdo and all this discussion. It's as exactly the same, with the same security policies that we had in France, saying you are with us against us. If you don't say I'm Charlie, it means that you are, what Bush was saying was said by Valls, exactly in the same equation, exactly the same. And what was presented as, emergency law in 2017 became and is today something which is the normal legal framework that we are dealing. So the emergency becomes normalized. In fact, exactly like in the United States of America, in the name of security, you are controlled, you are known, and you are suspected of being too much involved in social and political ground. And this is exactly what happens. So the security process that we had in the United States of America, it's the same in look at Prevent in the UK, look at what is happening in France, look at what is happening all over Europe. And what was said, it's the easiest thing that you have to say is just to say that you are dealing with political Islam. Political Islam means threats mean security means control. That's it. That's the point. This is where we are now, and we have to understand this, and we have to understand that, yes, as Western Muslims, we have to be quite clear. Our problem, but this is something that I have been saying for the last 30 years. We don't read history, and we only think that we have to read about, to deal with Islam, we have to deal with Muslim majority countries. We don't understand that what was done to communists, what was done to opponents, what was done to, it's also done to us today. So we need to read history and to understand that this political strategy that we are facing when it comes to security, when it comes to control, these transnational policies that we have in the West, this is not new. This is something that we are the new target, but these are old strategies. We have to read history. We have to know more about history, and then to come to what are we going to, in which way we have to deal. If only we were to know more about Latin American history and political history, how the opponents were dealt with. If we were to study what happened in South Africa with the Black movement, what happened in the United States of America with the Black movement as well, because we are idealizing, the Islamic side of Malik Shabazz history, but he is coming from something which has to do with the social involvement of Black people in the American fabric and the American history. We have to understand this, because he was not only targeted because he was a Muslim, he was targeted because he was a leader of leaders asking for what? Same rights, justice, and respect. And if we don't get this understanding, we are starting again the same story, not understanding that we have to draw some teachings from history, understand how we have to deal with this. And it's time for us to understand that we have to be serious about our involvement in the West today. And it's not about just our rights, it's about our duty. I think that we have to get it right. We are a leading force to help the West to reconcile itself with its own values when it comes to justice and human dignity. And this is why we have to stand, to understand that we are to be witnesses to the people around us for the message that we are defending and promoting, which has to do with one humanity and the same justice, it's equality. This is where we have to stand. It's a question of understanding our duty, not only to ask for our rights. That's the point. We need an intellectual revolution here about what are you doing? Are you just going to try to be accepted in this society, or are you understanding your duty to change this society for the better? And it means that you have to change your mind. You have to change the way you look at your own society and say, we have something to give, we have something to give at all levels. It has to do with the ethical, social ground, but it also to deal with the legal framework and the political situation in these countries, and what is happening, for example, in the United States of America. You know that we talked about this. So the leadership is trying its our sisters and brothers are doing their best. Unfortunately, there is very often a lack of understanding, and too often a lack of courage.
The war in Ukraine, how is that impacting French life today? It looks like this is going to be an intractable conflict that's going to be going on for a while. How is it affecting France?
It's affecting the French political discourse, and once again, it's as if you cannot discuss here the reality or the foundations of the whole crisis. It's you have to be with the West. You have to support the United States of America, and the United States of America is very much leading towards this crisis. And they knew before even something was going to happen, that it was going to happen. Even it's as if as we had it in Iraq in the first Gulf War, that they were pushing in one way to create a crisis that is going to help the American economy, and also with the European crisis, put the United States of America as central to the whole equation for the future. And you are in Europe, and you are in France, almost compelled to take a stand with Ukraine and against Russia, not being able to say, look, hold on, that there is a problem here. We have to speak about NATO. We have to speak about the American strategy. We have to listen to what Putin was saying, even though we are not supporting him, even though I was from the Chechen's crisis up to now, very much critical towards Putin. When he was saying, you are surrounding us, and this NATO strategy, the military bases that you had everywhere, are putting this at risk, and you are telling us it's all about human rights. In fact, it's also about geopolitical strategy in the region against Russia and against China, because at the end of the day, this is something which is also important, is the relationship and the close relationship that Russia has had over the last decade with China, and the Chinese new policy towards not only Russia, not only Western countries, but also African countries and its presence everywhere today, and challenging the US leadership and economic stability. I think that this also has to be quite clear for us, that once again, in order for us to show that we are very much Western and that we are supporting, a Western understanding of the global crisis, it's as if we have no space to criticize what was done in Ukraine, or what was done in the Western strategy in the region, saying the way you are pushing towards this crisis and the way you are supporting Ukrainian, we are on the side of the victims, and we have to support the civilians, yes, but the civilians everywhere. So we have to be critical towards this with us or against us, which is completely wrong. Russian discourse about what the West is doing in the region is quite legitimate, and we have to listen to it. Even though we are against Putin, say, yes, what you are doing, it's really to try to take over the whole thing. So this is one thing. And at the same time, just to ask the West, please, in the name of human dignity, some kind of consistency would be clear. If you are on the side of the victims, don't forget, because we have some leaders saying, don't forget Yemen, don't forget Syria, don't forget refugees everywhere, and they are always forgetting to mention Palestinians. So we have to put them in the side. It's all the victims around the world, and on this. So these are two sides of the same equation here that we have to tackle when it comes to this discussion.
Mm-hmm. I'm quite certain that you had some rather deep thoughts about what recently took place in Pakistan with the removal of the government of Imran Khan, his removal as prime minister, and the tumult that is still taking place in Pakistan with reverberations throughout the global community among Pakistani nationals wherever they happen to be, or I should say, Pakistan, Muslims and non-Muslims of Pakistani heritage, wherever they happen to be in the globe, I should say, whether it's the United States, the UK, in France there. I mean, what happened in Pakistan had tremendous reverberations throughout the globe. What are your thoughts on what took place?
I think it's once again, we very often when we speak about the region, we speak about Afghanistan, we speak about India, we speak about China, we speak about what is happening, the crisis around, as if Pakistan was a second player or a second-class player in the region, and in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's central. You can't get what is happening in Afghanistan, in India, in Kashmir, in the whole region, if you don't understand the central role played by Pakistan. And this is why you can't deal with Pakistan and you can understand what is happening within Pakistan if you don't get the American policy in the region. And they are playing. So when, for example, the no motion confidence and what Imran Khan was saying by saying this is coming from outside, this is coming from and by the way, the role of the army, the Pakistani army, and the way they were dealing with the American intelligence. And this is not new. This has been the case for the last 30 years. We have to understand this. So once again, for some of our sisters and brothers around the world, when it comes to Pakistan, they think, oh, it's only when the so-called Islamists are coming in the political arena that it's creating problems, because the Islamists are going to support the Taliban and there is an Islamic game all around. That's not the case. In fact, Imran Khan coming with a quite clear position about Kashmir, a clear positioning about India and the way they are treating, the Kashmiri reality and also the Muslims, and just putting forward some key issues that were not liked by the Americans, put him over the last years in a very difficult situation inside the country, but under pressure coming from foreign pressure. We know this. So when he's saying this, when he's saying you, the army, and even the Supreme Court, are you really independent? So he was wise enough to say, okay, I accept, but we from within, over what happened with Bhutto, what happened with Nawaz Sharif, and all these leaders, we know how central the American game is for the international, the political stability within the domestics, and it has to do with the reality of the way Pakistan is dealing with Afghanistan and today with the Taliban. It has to do with the relationship between Pakistan and India, and it has to do with the relationship between Pakistan and the United States of America. So for all the people who are saying it's a domestic issue, as Modi said it from India, this is a joke. It's not a domestic issue. It's an international push in order to change someone who is disturbing, even though he is not an Islamist, but he's troubling and disturbing the American agenda in the region.
Now, speaking about the region and the various actors that raise issues of concern for some of the, I should say, for many of the opinion makers and shapers in the West. What about China and India? Their impact within this geopolitical equation, and beyond that question, should China and India's treatment of Muslims be a cause for global concern in your view?
Yes, of course, and I think that the answer is already in your question, and of course this is the case. Let me just, if I may, start with one thing that I think we should not dismiss or underestimate in the way we are dealing with what is happening as for Muslims and our understanding. You remember one of our last discussions where when the Afghani and the American left and say this was a defeat, and I was always cautious about what is happening in Afghanistan. I am still now saying and repeating, because this was a discussion we had with someone I like very much, and I respect very much his views on international issues, is Mozambique. But he was saying the the Taliban are changing, they are moving towards something which is understanding the Afghani landscape and the political priority is. You see what is happening today, and I would say we have to be very cautious with who is pushing, and are they really independent in the way they are dealing with the region. And I think that we have to be very cautious. The so-called American retreat might have been a step towards a new strategy in the region, and I think that this is the case with leadership in Afghanistan. And we have to have this in mind, because we have to stop being naive. It happened once, even in Gaza. We were told Gaza is free today, but in fact, it was an open jail controlled from outside by the Israeli government. And I think that we have to look at it this way, in the way at the local level they are playing with, traditional, sometimes literalists, understanding that are not so bright in the political understanding of the balance of power in the region. That's a question mark that I am putting, and that we have to keep in mind, because it has an impact or it is connected to our discussion in Pakistan, with Pakistan, but also with India and China. This is one point. As to what is happening to the Uyghur and what is happening with the far right Hindu parties and movement, because it's not only a party, it's really much something which is happening within the society, which is changing the whole Indian climate. And this is something also, we talked about at the beginning, we talked about France, and in 2012, what I was saying, it was a discussion between Sarkozy and Hollande to who was going to be the next president. And I was saying at the end of the discussion that they had, the only true winner is the far right rhetoric. Because in fact, they are playing at the center, but they are normalizing. This is exactly what is happening. The climate in India, it's normalizing something which is making the Muslim citizens and the Islamic reference as being a threat to the national security. And it's promoted and targeting Muslims. And I think that we have to be quite clear. Yes, it's a big economic market. Yes, it's a very important international economic player and political player, but we understand that the silence of the global community is much more about the economic concerns and interest there. And it's exactly the same with the Chinese market, because what the Chinese are doing with the Uyghur and the concentration camp and discrimination and torture and this is the reality. Again, saying exactly the same. These people are separatists. These people are terrorists. These people are promoting political Islam. It's again the same rhetoric. What we heard, 50 years ago in Egypt, saying our opponents are very radical, so we have the right to do whatever we want against them. That it's now international and normalized, and we have to be quite clear that. It cannot be accepted in the name of economic interest to be silent with what China is doing. So for those who in the United States of America or even in Europe think that, okay, we are criticizing the United States of America because it's politics and its strategies around the world are negative towards Muslims and Islam. We have to be quite clear that on the other side, it's exactly the same and even worse. So we should avoid playing one country against the other or one leader against the other. We have to be quite clear that when it comes to Islam now, there is a transnational understanding that the leading potential force in the world, as to the number, as to the figures, as to criticizing what is happening, it's coming today from, or potentially could come from, Muslims around the world. So they are targeted at the national level. Are we ready now to have a global understanding of the common challenges that we are facing? But we cannot keep quiet when it comes to India and when it comes to China. That's not possible. And even by the way, even in Israel. So we heard what the Russian foreign minister said about Israel and about the Jews, and then Putin apologized 2 days ago, I think. So we know that he's here something also with the Israeli central role in the whole business of promoting or making the people understand, or making this awareness about the challenge for Palestine something that is promoted by Islamists and political Islam. And we have to be quite clear now that it's not about this. It's really about our main concern for human dignity and being on the side of all the victims. So this is why Muslims, when it comes to China, should not only be on the side of the Uyghur, but they also have to say something about the Tibetans, because they are victims. Mm-hmm. So we can't be selective in the way we are with the victims. So we also have and I'm sorry, I would say that if you are serious about human rights and dignity, you also have to be on the side of the social workers in Gulf states. Mm-hmm. because you are on the side of the victim. So we need to be this leading force of no selection and no double standards in our criticism towards the way some countries are dealing with human rights.
Yes, I agree. And, on the issue of Gulf states, share your thoughts again, Brother Tariq, on the efforts that continue to be made. And, these are very aggressive efforts being made in a number of Gulf states to normalize relations with the apartheid Zionist state of Israel. Share your thoughts on that.
I think that it's in fact it's a difficult question, and we have to look at it from different angles. Because as you said, if you look at the situation today, if you go to the Emirates, for example, you look at even Saudi Arabia, Qatar, over the last let's say 20 years, because it's not recent. What is recent is that now it's visible. But the old relationship and diplomatic relationships with Israel, they were there. So they started to talk and they started to be involved. The first country which did it was Egypt. On the public, it was visible through the process of Anwar al-Sadat. But the relationship with Israel and the diplomatic and even economic and even security relationship was already there. Now it's visible, and we know that the countries in the region and the Gulf states are dealing with Israel. So we knew this, and we know that. And now, as you are saying, they are normalizing the relationship, saying two things to all the people around the world. We are not going to support the Palestinian cause more than just verbally and when in times of crisis. So yes, when there is a crisis, we can send, transforming the Palestinian cause into a humanitarian cause. So we help the people who are victims of bombing, but we are not talking about justice. We are not talking about the land. We are not talking about independence. We are not talking about a state. We're just talking about poor people that we have to support in times of crisis. That's unacceptable, and this is the way the rhetoric is coming, and this is the way Israel wants it to be. You help them to build schools, but you don't help them to get their rights as a country and as a state. So this is what is happening. But why am I saying that we have to look at it from different angles? Because at this time that many of the people who are very much criticizing Gulf states, they forget to say that over the last now 2 years, you have seen Turkish policy changing towards Israel. So there have been economic relationships and military relationships, and through the NATO as well. So Turkey today is completely changing its regional role in the in relationship with Israel, Saudi Arabia. You look at what is happening with Khashoggi, just accepting that it's not going to be an issue anymore, and with Egypt and with Israel. So we have to look at it and say, okay, we have to differentiate between a strategy and normalizing relationship. Because at the end of the day, the most important support some countries had towards Palestinians, it's as if today they are no longer ready for that. It's just to normalize with Israel as if it's no longer an issue. While we know at the same time, we who are living in the West, who are living and dealing with all this, that all this rhetoric about our presence in the West, then the foreign policies has to do with the central issue of Palestine. But the leaders are not following. So you have this, and we have been dealing with this for the last decades, is people very much supporting Palestinians and leaders ready to deal with the Israeli government, whatever the price, whatever the compromission. And this is where we once again have to be quite clear. the main problem of the Palestinians is not Israel, is the Arab countries and the Muslim majority countries' leadership. This is the main problem: is that they have been let down by these governments, and there is no support. That's the reality of it.
I recently saw a report. I wish I could find it right now. Um, about the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the UAE, Amir Hayek. Are you familiar with him?
I heard about him. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
That in the UAE there was a very special prayer service for the Israeli soldiers. This is just very recent. I saw the report, and it was the first time it came to my attention who the ambassador of who the Israeli ambassador to the UAE was, and the first thought that came to mind is this individual. I mean, by the sound of his name, he sounds like he could be Arab, and I'm wondering if he is also by profession a Muslim. But I just thought it quite, to say the least, interesting that there was this this report and well publicized and really a big deal for Israel and for the United Arab Emirates. That this special prayer in the UAE for Israeli soldiers. I mean, against the backdrop of, subhanAllah, what just recently took place during the month of Ramadan at El-Aqsa, and
exactly, yeah.
subhanAllah, and what's continues to happen in that largest open air prison in the world called Gaza. It's really sad. I mean, it's
Yeah, but if you understand what is happening there, yes, there are prayers for soldiers, Israeli soldiers, as if they were the victims, and they are praying for them. But at the same time, what is happening in the country there, in the Emirates, is also something which has to do with, from this ambassador, is someone who was involved in the Israeli security. So they are not only coming with the religious side, the friendship. It's about security. It's about helping them with so he was involved in Israel with this whole business of security and intelligence. So entering and coming within the country, the United Arab Emirates, is really also to bring his expertise in how do you control and monitor any dissident voice within the country. So that's also very important. We have to be quite clear with this new policy that we have with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and also even Qatar in its and Bahrain, and Kuwait, is this policy putting billions now in the way to look at the security on Facebook, on internet, putting money and just to target and to know who are the people who are now the voices against their own policy, and promoting an international propaganda against, once again, political Islam, and targeting the people who are dissident in the whole thing. So it's the source of something which is global. It's a local source of something which is global, and the local source is where Arabs are dealing with Israel against people who are saying no to oppression. That's the reality of it. They are objective allies against all the voices that are saying no to the Palestinian oppression and the Israeli policy in the region.
Dr. Ramadan, I want to thank you for joining us, Saki. We're at the end of the broadcast. I knew this time would fly by fast. What I'd like to do is to ask you with a 2-minute response, inshallah ta'ala, just share your perspective on what Muslim leaders and activists should be, in your view, prioritizing during this time of tumultuous global challenge. What should be our priorities from your view?
I would say I would put three priorities. The first one, again, and I think it's important, what we have coming from our tradition is follow the path. اتبعوها. You have to follow the path. In order to follow the path, we have to know the path, and the path is two sides in Islam. It's the internal spiritual one, and I would say be careful not to be drawn, not to be too much attracted by the political discussions, forgetting the spiritual equation. Know the light, know the path. So know about yourself, because the first challenge, the first target, all what we have been talking about now, is just trying to get is for us to pray less, fast less, and being much less involved in the spiritual side. So our strength is coming from our heart, and the heart is giving some light to our brain. That's important, and this is the spiritual. So this is why, this discussion that we have within the communities in Islam is, the Sufi and the political activists. We have to reconcile this. The political activists should be much more concerned with their spiritual training. Know the path. This is one. Know what you want. The second is we have to learn much more about the world. So read doesn't mean only read the Quran. You start by reading the Quran, but you read history, you read the society, you know the challenges within, you know, to try to understand the landscape, which is what the fuqaha did from the very beginning. I know the Quran and I know my society. And in order to be faithful to the Quran, I need to know my society. And to know my society is to know its history, this collective psychology, and what we are. And this is what we have to do with the West. So no, read more about history. And the third one, once again, is really too much to stop being on the defensive, to stop being obsessed with Islamophobia and we are victims and they don't like us. Now, what are we going to propose, and what are the alternative views that we can put forward for the people to understand that we are positive agent of peace and a positive presence. So this is something that has to come with the new generation. We see so many good and bright Muslims today. We want them to now come as the next generation and coming with, okay, what are you proposing to this society? It's very easy to sit down and to criticize. Now you have to stand up and to propose. So I would say that, but to do this, once again, it comes to the first. If you want to propose something good, know the path. Because without path, you are lost. And if you are lost, you are not building the future for us and for the others around us.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much, my brother, for joining us again on this platform and for sharing your insights and your wisdom with us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept, and may the advice you've given, the heartfelt nasiha, find receptive hearts and minds among the viewers and listeners of this broadcast. Today in the United States, we are observing Mother's Day. So I want to convey a very warm and heartfelt happy Mother's Day to all of the committed mothers out there. Not just in the United States, but around the world. And I also want to conclude today's broadcast with a little video clip that has to do with a very special mother who has been engulfed in a very um, unfortunate circumstance for far too long. Inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to have something to say about this video clip that you're going to see later, inshallah ta'ala, in another broadcast. But we want to conclude with this very, very special clip that is coming from a non-Muslim woman who, an elder, who became aware of the plight of our sister in Islam, Dr. Afia Siddiqui, through the 5-city mobilization that we waged on our sister's behalf a few months ago. Again, we're going to have something more to say about this later. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Brother Tariq, Brother Sadiq, please, let's end with the video.
It seems to me that the 86 years that she was given are very suspicious. That's a life sentence. You want to get rid of that person so they're never able to tell what they actually know. So I think that comes from fears of the wrongdoing that has been a part of her case this whole time. What I can do here in my place is to share her story and to use social media, as was suggested, to alert other people to her name and her situation, and to demand. I mean, if our government says liberty and justice for all, then we need to pursue that justice for all, not just for some. I think it's very important. Somebody mentioned unity. I think unity in messaging on her case will be very important. And I would ask you if it is possible to print out the testimonies of the people that were in this rally. I didn't get to hear all of them, and I would certainly like to hear them and read them again so that I can refer to them when I do social messaging. If there's anybody that I have ever heard about who deserves clemency and release, it is Dr. Siddiqui. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who are working so hard to bring justice to her and to open up this information to the public. I agree, we are not free until everybody is free. So thank you very much for your work. I will try to do what I can from here.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This is a reflection of the work that we have been blessed to do. I am so glad that this elder, this non-Muslim, non-Pakistani elder, expressed the thoughts and the feelings that she did, the importance of a unified message, the importance of each and every one of us doing what we're capable of doing, in order to, make a difference. And toward that end, the 1,000 points of contributory light campaign that we started during the month of Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala, it will continue. It will continue until we reach that 1,000 donor objective, inshallah ta'ala, and along with that, the awareness that comes with it, the involvement that comes with it. We wanted to set a date for a mobilization before the month of Ramadan ended, another mobilization, a much larger one in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. We weren't able to do that because we didn't have the we did not receive the commitment that we needed from at least one Muslim center in the Washington, D.C. area. What we did experience unfortunately, was some opposition from one of the largest centers in the country. And we're going to have more to say about that later. But, subhanAllah, the struggle will continue. It will not end. We will be setting a date for a major rally in the nation's capital for our sister Afia, and by extension, our other political prisoners who will be impacted by our sister's freedom once it is won. But until then, the struggle continues. Bi'idhnillah. Thank you for joining us. May Allah Ta'ala bless us and preserve us in all of our endeavors of good. Until next week, peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.